Controlling reflections and reverb in your space is important for both recording and listening. Today I'm going to show you how to build an acoustic ceiling cloud so you can get some broadband absorption in your space. And before I get started, I just want to remind you that it's important to check both your building codes and health information before building and installing any absorption panels in your space. I've done my homework, so let's get to it. I'm going to be building a rather large cloud for my YouTube space. It's going to be 4 feet by 8 feet. And I'll have the measurements in the video later on, but of course you can modify this to build something that's the right size for you. Now I'll be using 1x pine boards for the frame construction for my cloud, but you'll have to choose what's available in your area. Most important thing is to make sure that it's both lightweight and sturdy. And I'll be using a power saw to make the cuts here, but of course you can use a hand saw for this as well. The important thing is to take your time, get all the measurements right. And once all your cuts are done, then we can move on to assembly. Carefully measure out all the locations for the cross pieces in your frame. They're going to add stability as well as support for the sound-absorbing insulation. I'm using a pin nailer here to help hold the boards in place because I only have one set of hands, but you can do this without that. Remember to pre-drill before putting the screws in for each board. I'll be using a layer of landscape fabric inside the frame to both support the insulation and also keep any fibers from escaping through the main fabric. Go ahead and staple that in to get ready. Then we'll go ahead and apply the main fabric to one side of the frame. So go ahead and staple it, start in the middle, and you'll work your way to the outside. Now when it comes to insulation for your absorption panels, there are a lot of choices. I'm going to be using the Roxul Comfort Board 80. I've chosen it because it's a little higher density, and so it's going to absorb into the lower frequencies fairly well at the expense of some high frequency absorption. If you're looking for some higher frequencies, the Owens Corning 705 is a really popular choice. It's actually more efficient as an absorber than the Comfort Board 80, but it doesn't reach down into the lower areas. Because I've measured my room and I understand the frequencies and know that I'll have an opportunity to deal with the higher frequencies as I do panels around the space, I've gone for the broadband absorption of the Comfort Board 80 in the ceiling cloud. Once you have the fabric attached along one of the long edges, go ahead and add the insulation. You'll see here that I'm running 2 layers in opposite directions. That'll give some extra stiffness to the panel. Once you get that in, make sure to add another layer of the same landscape fabric over the back. Tuck it into the sides. This will encapsulate the insulation so that we don't have any fibers leaking out. Once that's done, attach the cleat on the other side to complete the frame, and then we're ready to go ahead and add up the fabric. Complete the panel. Go ahead and wrap the fabric around the other long edge, start in the middle, pulling it tight, and then staple again from the middle towards the outside. Once that's done, we need to get the corners in place. And this is probably the most difficult thing when building the panel because we want to get a nice, straight, crisp edge. Start by pulling the fabric towards the inside and then pull up. And you'll see here that I'm having to move it around a few times to get it just right. I'm kind of jockeying it back and forth. But once I get it lined up on the bottom and the top, I'm going to hold it in place while I staple it in. And I'm going to start by stapling along the edge, and then I'll fill in the whole corner area just to make sure that I have this really good and secure. After that, we need to get the ends done. Again, pull tight in the center, start stapling from inside to the outsides. Now that the panel's complete, we're ready to go ahead and hang it in the space. Now here it's going to depend on the type of framing structure that your space is made with. So if you have wood framing, in any case, you want to make sure that the hangers are attaching into the joists running across the ceiling. If you have a cement space, you want to make sure you have proper anchors that are going to grip into that ceiling. Now, I'll be using 6 hooks on my panel, so 3 on each side. I'm going to space them according again to where the joists are in my room. There are a number of different kinds of hooks that you can use. Again, your building code may specify something, and it also has a little bit to do with how much weight you need to support. Lots of strength is better than not enough. Now, there's also a variety of ways that you can drop the panel down from the ceiling. And so you can use chain or you can use aircraft cable. There's a variety of adjustable options. And again, your building code might specify what you need. But the idea here is to choose whatever's going to make it easiest to install that is still safe. Now that all that work's done, the question is, how much of a difference did it make? I went ahead and recorded a clap to test the reverb decay before I put the cloud in, and another one after. Now, looking at the comparison, we can see there's definitely a drop in amplitude of those reflections of that reverb after installing the cloud. Now, when I look at a detailed comparison, there are two things that really jump out here. The first is, certainly the time has been reduced. We can see that it's pretty obvious the reflection duration has been reduced. The big thing here is that the original peak for the clap was at minus 16.5 dB, and when I measure the time it takes for a 60 decibel decrease, in other words, for the amplitude of the reflections or the reverb to reach minus 76.5 dB, without the cloud it took 91 milliseconds, and after the cloud 41 milliseconds. So a tremendous reduction in the amount of time that those echoes were hanging around. The second thing, though, is the frequency. And we can see that after the cloud, the remaining frequencies are a lot more even versus before. And that was part of my reasoning for choosing a broadband absorber for my cloud. I wanted to have a more equal reduction in those reflections in that echo throughout the room. And it's because this space is used for music as well as spoken word that even frequency response is really important. Ultimately, this space is going to get a lot more use for mixing, so we really want to have that even response across the board if we can have it. And we'll take a look at that in a future video when we install the broadband panels on the walls, as well as doing some other updates to the room, including some new studio monitors. Now, it's really impossible to get a completely neutral flat space. Even the top studios in the world, where they have, millions of dollars to spend, they sound different depending where you are in the room, because the frequency response is always going to vary based on location. But if we can get it as close as possible, as accurate as possible, that's going to really help our recordings and our mixes translate outside of the space. And we don't always record and mix with studio monitors. Sometimes we like to use headphones. And if that's something you do, check out this video where we look at NX Germano Studios, the way to get a mix room in your headphones.